The Forgotten Cause, a play in 4 acts, by Tony Rayner. The setting is the upper-middle-class 2-story home of Dr. James Smith, Manhattan, New York, 1860. Act 1, Scene 1. It is 10 p.m. Dr. James Smith enters from his office carrying a 10-page essay he has written and is in the process of editing. He pours a glass of water from a pitcher on the buffet in the dining room and makes his way back toward the office. There is a knock on the front door.
James, where were you tonight? You couldn't have forgotten the victory celebration.
No, I didn't forget. I was committed to writing an essay for the Frederick Douglass.
Hello, Catherine.
Good evening, Dr. White. Can I bring you anything?
No, thank you.
Well, I'll give you gentlemen your privacy.
Good night, Catherine.
That essay's topic must be of extraordinary importance for you to miss the festivities to celebrate an accomplishment that's taken 15 years of struggle to achieve. A victory that owes so much to your diplomatic persuasion these past 5 years.
I am acutely aware of that fact, Philip, but I have lately had serious doubts as to your clear understanding of it. You don't know what I'm referring to?
No.
I'm speaking of total disregard and possibly betrayal.
Do you mean my failure to respond to your correspondence these past weeks?
Not a word from the moment I resigned as senior vestryman at St. Philip's and you stepped into the position.
I was simply consumed. I never meant to offend you.
Well, offense has been taken.
You have my deepest apology. James, there isn't a moment that I am not exceedingly aware that without you, without your generous investment in me, I might not be in a position to have such influence on the course of our community.
Perhaps no influence at all.
I can't agree with that. There has always been what I believe to be a divine destiny which guides my life. I know that I am meant not necessarily for greatness, but to work tirelessly for the benefit of the colored of this city as well as this nation. My work, our work in Gotham, in some way influences the lives of all of us for the better, even the most degraded of our brethren shackled within the cruel vestiges of Southern slavery, those unfortunate millions sentenced by law to ignorance and hardship with nothing but their souls to call their own. They are the ultimate focus of my life. When I stepped into your shoes as senior vestryman, I quickly realized that I could not fill them completely. For the last months, those loose-fitting shoes have left me on the verge of being overwhelmed. It took all of my efforts to continue to shuffle along without losing them. In the end, we were successful. But if that victory has led to a rift between you and I that cannot be bridged, that loss would far outweigh any triumph.
You know, I was sure from the moment we met that there was something in your spirit that would take you beyond your obvious aptitude for chemistry. That is the number one reason I offered you the apprenticeship. I knew that your success as a chemist would place you in a position to fulfill your more important potential. I somehow lost sight of that. I did have a ferocious desire to bask in the glorious recognition of my contributions to our victory. It is now clear to me that it was only my blind assumption that I was being purposely excluded that denied me that recognition. Forgive me for doubting you.
You can always count on my loyalty, James. We are traveling in the same direction, sometimes walking, seldom running, often forced to take several steps back towards whence we came. But altogether our journey is a slow, painful crawl forward. However small these steps, they will eventually bring us to our destination. Those are your words.
Reason, knowledge, and truth, they are our most powerful weapons. How often have I said that? Yet I foolishly allowed myself to loosen my grasp on that, too. This isn't the first time you've had to bring me to my senses, Philip. I am certainly blessed to have you as my friend. Tell me about the celebration.
It was exciting. Besides the overwhelming approval of St. Philip's admittance, finally, to the Episcopal Diocesan Convention, There were several individuals that gave rousing speeches focused on the present condition as well as the steady advancement of our people. I'm sure that you are aware that your mother took the stage.
What? No, I was not aware of that.
She spoke rather provocatively about the plight of neglect that many of our colored women endure at the hands of their colored men, and the resulting applause encompassed not only the women present on this special occasion, but a large portion of the society members as well.
I see. Who else spoke?
Besides Lavinia, the three others gave memorable orations. Lewis veered away from his usual passionate words focused on the abolition of slavery to discuss the very stinging affront to the word freedom that is the condition of the Negro in the North. He then introduced our newly arrived friend Toby Burrows, who took up the banner of abolition. The fourth speaker was a Mr. John Bingham, a Negro resident of the city, a freeman, who had some quite critical things to say about you, me, Albro Lyons, and all those whom he referred to as the so-called black elite of this city.
He certainly is not the first Negro resident to be blind to both the steadfast sincerity and unselfish nature of our struggle. All we can do is pray that one day the benefits of our victories to every African in this land will become clear to him. I would have loved to experience the energy of the occasion, to absorb every one of those orations. Since I cheated myself from attending, my imagination will have to suffice.
What part do we wives, mothers, sisters, and daughters play in the struggle of our community? We are excluded from the male-dominated societies, such as the Philomathian.
These societies, lodges, and councils
Keep husbands, fathers, brothers, and sons so completely occupied that often less money and little if any time is accorded to the family. And cruel neglect is the result. I say, what good is our continued fighting if the very foundation of our strength, the source from which spouts the rivers of strong minds and bodies that make precious victory possible, is left to dry up? Do we colored women not suffer the same societal slights as our colored men? Subject to the same ephemeral whims of virulent racism and lawful discrimination? Give us our rightful place. Do not neglect or exclude. We are half the army. Let us all join in the struggle, or we must face a much longer road to victory, or even no victory at all.
The so-called black elite of this city have much more in common with their ruling class counterparts than they imagine. The white paternalistic so-called benefactors of the Negro community inarguably want to bring about an end to slavery in the South. However, they use encouraging language centered on words such as uplift and elevate to fool our brethren into believing that not only freedom for the slave, but equality is within our reach. Yet I tell you that their true intentions focus entirely on doing all that is necessary to maintain the status quo. Property-owning colored men like Scotland-educated James Vicune Smith, like Albro Lyons, Philip White, and Peter Guignon, lecture us about education and intellectual elevation, but also prescribe to the idea that us Negroes must do all that is necessary to be as much like the white man as possible. True freedom does not come with conditions that are an impediment to black progress. The colored elite have placed themselves at the top of a divisive hierarchy that emphasizes class distinction. They have become the arrogant, privileged overseers of the less fortunate niggers, stooping down to raise up the masses, yet like the society at large, maintain their own rank.
The degradation afforded to the majority of Negroes in this country, a Christian nation, is appalling. I speak not only of those poor, wretched slaves of the South, but vast numbers of coloreds who are residents here in Gotham and all across the North. They have a slightly lower child mortality rate than their slave brethren and experience somewhat greater longevity. But their degradation is, in my estimation, made more shameful when one considers their acutely ironic label of free. These fellow citizens, yes, I say citizens, and by the laws of civilized morality they are citizens. These citizens are subjected to such cruel and undeserved racial prejudice that they cannot help but be instilled with the false belief that they are naturally inferior. I have observed that any human being, regardless of color, who is convinced, even unconsciously, of their inferiority, will very quickly begin to behave in an inferior manner. I am here to tell you that I, for one, have committed all that I am and all that I own to eliminating this terrible scourge of racial prejudice from the great city of New York, and with God's continued help, this nation. For know that it is not only the Negro who will suffer the consequences of this awful affliction's destructive power, but it will undoubtedly spark an inferno that must consume all of us.
I've hear be said by some that the slave be better off than the free niggers in the North. I've been here in New York these past 10 days, and I can tell y'all for sure that it ain't got no truth to it. I expect I'll be born about 1825 to Master Joshua Burroughs in Georgia. Not rightly sure of the date, 'cause my mammy, she died when I was be just a child. I was be looked after by Aunt Portia, whose job it was on the plantation to care for the young chillins while they's mammies and pappies worked the field. Aunt Portia was never sure of the year I was be born, but she made sure I was know that my mammy loved me. And if it wasn't for that old overseer tying my mammy to a tree and using that bullwhip to beat her naked body till she dead, she'd be right here this day doing all she could to take care of me. I remember I was be about 7 or 8 when that overseer come and took me to work the field. I don't mind at first 'cause it mean I'll be close to my pappy, but I was done right quick that it ain't nothing to be glad about. We's worked from 'fore the sun come up till the sun go down again. And all the niggers best bring in their quarter of cotton every day, or else they end the day with a hide and lay their backside toe up, covered with the blood, and then rubbed with salt. I spent my life suffering on that plantation, with never enough to eat, and not enough rags on my body to keep me warm. And in that time I seen my 3 brothers sold to the nigger driver, my sister made breeding stock, folks to have chillins by massa, or in its leave he see fit. Then my pappy worked so hard in the field that one day he just dropped. Had to be carried back to the cabin, and he dead that night. I remember everything that going on that plantation. Terrible things. Some good things too, but not enough to matter. Yes, sir, I can tell you all for sure slavery is hell. About 5 Sundays have passed since I've made up my mind to escape. And I've got none but the deepest happiness that Dr. Jane, Dr. Phillip, Mr. Captain, and the other men have been in charge of the New York Vigilance Committee, been able to save me from the slave catcher. I also want to be an educated man, to know things about how all these terrible times come to be. Dr. James say that we know less or better than Massa, that we's connected by our blood to this here land, our birthplace, our home, that knowing is where the power lies. He say freedom will make your body free, but it be knowledge that'll make your mind free. The lies of some white men can only be beaten by the truth. I can't get my head around all the ideas that Dr. James and Dr. Phillips talks about. Like all niggers going to be free, uplifted, with plenty of everything. White and black living equal and together. Seems like the biggest miracle God could ever do. But I'm going to get my head around it. I'm going to get my head around it if it's the last thing I does.
Act 1, Scene 2. It is 4 a.m. There is a knocking at the front door. James, in night clothes and carrying an oil lamp, enters from upstairs. At the same time, Catherine enters from the kitchen, also in night clothes and carrying an oil lamp.
I'll get it, Catherine. Who's there?
It's Louis.
Louis, is everything all right? Come in.
I apologize for calling on you this early. I have brought with me 2 souls recently arrived from an arduous journey north who are in need of a safe haven until I can find suitable situations for them. I am hoping you can accommodate them both because they won't be separated.
Yes, Louis, we can take them both. We said goodbye to our last guests 2 days ago, so there is room. Please bring them inside.
Wonderful. Come in, please.
Harold and Sadie enter, exhausted and overwhelmed. Sadie is 6 months pregnant.
Hello. Welcome.
Dr. Smith, this is Harold and Sadie.
I'm very happy to meet both of you. This is Catherine. She will take you to your room.
You must be hungry. I'll get you a bite to eat as well.
No need to be troubling yourself about food, missus. Mr. Tappan be kind enough to see that we both got something to eat.
All right, then. Right this way. I'll bring you down a basin of water and some towels. There's also plenty of clean clothes for you both.
Catherine takes him to the door under the stairs leading to the basement.
I will be in contact with you very soon. We will have you settled before you know it.
Can't thank you enough, Mr. Tappan. We sure be mighty thankful to y'all for your kindness.
Thank you.
All 3 exit.
Striking couple? Husband and wife?
No, cousins. Thank you for taking them in on such short notice. A member of the Vigilance Committee happened to find them just a few hours ago wandering the streets and brought them to my home. As you know, I am already seeing to the care of a family of 4, including 2 young children, so taking in 2 more would have jeopardized the safety of all of them.
Louis, you don't have to explain. I'm happy to help any person fleeing from bondage in any way I can. My greatest wish is that I would be able to do more.
Of course, my friend. I would never suggest that our work is ever for a moment seen by you or your family as an imposition.
What are their prospects?
Good. Lately, as you know, we have been lucky to find positions for most of them. Maintaining anonymity is always an issue. Harold, of course, will be even easier to place, especially if he is agreeable to passing as a white man.
You said they won't be separated.
Well, we'll see. I better let you get back to bed. I'm sure your patients would prefer their doctor to be at his bright-eyed best.
Have a safe trip home.
I should have some word soon. Good morning.
Good morning.
Act 1, Scene 3. Later that morning, Harold enters from the basement.
Hello?
He takes in the surroundings, the fine furnishings and family photographs throughout the room. Catherine enters from the kitchen, carrying newspapers and mail, places all on center stage left table.
Good morning.
Harold is startled by her presence, afraid he has done something wrong.
I'm sorry, missus.
Nothing to be sorry for. Breakfast is almost ready. You must be hungry by now.
You're right about that, missus. Sadie and me powerful hungry this morning.
I'll have everything ready shortly. Why don't I bring you a cup of coffee while you eat?
No.
Why not? You don't drink coffee.
Yes, I drinks coffee.
Well, I'll be right back in a tick.
Catherine exits. Harold goes to the basement door.
Sadie, you dressed yet?
Yeah, I was on my way up.
Here you go, Harold. Did you be wanting cream, sugar?
She holds out the cup. Sadie enters and is frozen by the sight of a white woman serving her cousin. Harold tentatively takes the cup.
No, missus. This be fine, thank ye.
You're welcome. Good morning, Sadie. Like I told Harold, breakfast will be ready before you know it, but if you'd like coffee now, I'll be glad to get it for you.
That'd be mighty nice.
Cree, Shepper.
Sadie shakes her head no.
Be right back. Please sit down.
Catherine exits. Sadie and Harold look at each other in amazement. They make their way to the dining table which has been set for breakfast. They are momentarily unsure of where to sit, but Harold guides Sadie to 2 chairs at the far side of the table. Catherine enters with Sadie's coffee.
Here you go.
Catherine places the cup in front of Sadie. She notices that Sadie's right ham has been seriously burned.
Thank you, Mrs.
You really mustn't call me Mrs., the both of you. My name's Catherine.
Thank you, Catherine.
There now, much better. Breakfast is coming out right now, and just in time. The doctor will be down any second.
She hurries back towards the kitchen door.
Can I help you, Catherine?
No, you just stay where you're at. I can lay out the breakfast in 2 minutes flat.
Catherine exits in the kitchen. Dr. Smith comes down the stairs.
Hello.
Harold and Sadie stand.
Early risers. But I suppose I shouldn't be at all surprised.
No, we's used to being up before the chickens.
Good morning to you, Dr. Smith.
James goes through the mail and newspapers, discovers a letter that gives him pause. He places it in his jacket pocket. Catherine enters carrying a silver tray with coffee pours, cups, sugar, and cream.
Good morning, Doctor. Breakfast is coming out right now.
Thank you, Catherine. Good morning. Sit down, relax. You must still be weary after that long and I can only imagine quite difficult journey.
Yes, sir. It was a hard road to travel, but ne'er a minute did we feel sorry for leaving.
Catherine enters with chafing dish suds containing eggs, bacon, and grits.
I understand. Help yourself to breakfast.
Harold and Sadie rise to go to the buffet. J.W. enters and makes his way down the stairs. He is surprised but not alarmed to see two strangers.
Good morning.
Good morning. This is Harold and Sadie. They are staying downstairs. This is my son, J.W.
Hello. Welcome.
Morning, Master J.W. Me and Sadie be sure grateful for you and your pappy allowing us to stay for a bit.
It's our pleasure, isn't it, Dad?
J.W. looks at Sadie.
It's our privilege. And please, just call me J.W.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Sit down. Eat.
Harold and Sadie return to their seats. J.W. makes himself a plate.
Where did you two come from?
Georgia. About 3 weeks past.
That's quite a journey. I'm sure made more difficult being that your wife is with child.
They're not husband and wife, J.W.
No, Sadie, my cousin.
Malvina enters from upstairs. She is pregnant.
Good morning, everyone. You must be Harold and Sadie. I'm James's wife, Malvina. Welcome to New York, my dears, and welcome to our home. I hope you were comfortable downstairs.
Yes'm. Never slept better. I spec breathing freedom and being mighty tired helped.
This household and many hundreds more have invested uncountable hours of effort and prayer to bring about an end to the nightmare of slavery. In fact, our hopes are running quite high on a particular candidate pursuing the office of president in the upcoming election.
Excuse me for speaking up, Dr. Smith, but how can one man stop something that's been going on for as long as any living slave can remember?
It will take much more than one man, Sadie. It will take thousands, hundreds of thousands, who believe in our cause and are willing to fight, willing to die. This man who we hope will win the White House is, from what we have witnessed, the kind of man capable of leading such an army.
Arnie? You talking war?
Freedom of a people is seldom won without blood being spilt. I have long advocated an immediate end to slavery by any means necessary.
Lavinia enters at the top of the stairs.
If it be true and war come, I's willing to join the fight. If they let the niggers take up rifles, I's be taking one up.
It will be the determination of Negroes to take up arms along with the determination of those in power to allow it, whether by choice or necessity, that will take the Africans of this country onto the battlefield.
You won't have to worry about whether or not you will be allowed to take up arms in the face of civil war, young man, because there won't be any war. Mr. Lincoln hasn't got a chance of winning. And without an anti-slavery president, a war to end slavery will not come.
Mother. This is my mother, Lavinia. Mom, meet Harold and Sadie. They joined our household early this morning.
Glad to meet you, missus.
Morning.
Welcome.
Mother, Philip paid me a visit last night. He described the quite stirring speech that you gave at the Society Hall earlier in the evening. I'm not by any means surprised, but I hope you weren't referring to the condition of this household.
No, son. But many colored women of this city are not as fortunate as those that reside at this address. You were sorely missed last night, James.
I have recently become free of any doubt regarding the truth of that.
I pray that you will also become free of placing your hopes on a presidential candidate that cannot be elected.
It's obvious that my mother and I disagree regarding the importance of Abraham Lincoln to the cause. But it is the opinion of my associates and myself that we must place our support behind this candidate because, right now at least, he is the only hope.
Until you can stop the endless flood of wealth produced by slavery, or when the plantation owners can make more money out of paying free workers, then and only then will it come to an end in this country. I haven't heard Mr. Lincoln come up with a plan that will bring about that result.
Lavinia sits. Catherine serves her a coffee.
Thank you, Catherine.
I understand your point, but I also have to believe in the power of righteousness. Slavery is an institution emerged in a pool of sinful degradation and inhuman abuse. The Christian conscience of this country cannot ignore this ugliness much longer.
The pure Christian heart has never ignored the ugliness of slavery. However, the majority of those who profit from it, whether it be the owners themselves, the slave traders, or those manufacturers and merchants who make their fortunes from the raw products of slavery, they also claim to be Christians.
I concede that it is not an easy task to convince the powers that be that slavery should be abolished. But our struggles in this land have never been easy. Hope, determination, and moral persuasion have been amongst our only weapons. At this moment, the tide of abolitionist fervor has never been higher, a force not only generated by the Negro, but made all the more powerful by thousands of whites, including many rich men like Lewis Tappan and Gerrit Smith, who are just as dedicated to producing the waves of righteous demands for freedom that might once and for all crush the back of this dark institution.
Don't forget, James, I was born and lived under slavery until I was 24 years of age.
How can I forget that?
Let me finish. After I escaped from bondage, my body was free, but I've known for many years that my mind was not. My soul had been poisoned by the lies that had been taught on the plantation. That our people were meant to be kept uneducated, to depend on master and his family for everything. That the good nigger was an obedient nigger.
But despite that, you still had the strength of character to run.
I would call it instinctual.
You made the conscious decision to run, Mother. You've always told us about that beating you received at the hands of Dad old overseer Jacob. One day you didn't pick your quota of tobacco? Well, it took 42 days, but once you could walk again, you walked right off that plantation and never looked back. That's the story I've heard ever since I can remember.
That is what happened, son, for the most part.
She looks at Harold and Sadie in solidarity.
I was carrying a child in my belly. But nevertheless, that Jake had stripped me naked and tied me to a tree. My face, breasts, and stomach pushed into the bark. He beat me with a thick hickory branch until I knew that I was dead.
Harold and Sadie nod their heads in recognition.
Once I recovered, I didn't give the idea of staying in that hellhole a second thought. In fact, I didn't think at all. I just gathered a few belongings, what scraps of food I could find, and left.
Mother, you don't need to do this. Why bring up all this past pain to the surface?
It's always there, James, just below the surface. Even after all these years, I will never escape it. I'm going to tell you, my family, and our guests, the truth. While making my way through those southern woods, I did start to think again. And old Massa and his plantation was able to reach into my heart and plant the seeds of doubt where none had been sown. What would happen to my other children? Would Massa take revenge on the 4 of them? I tried to convince myself that he wouldn't. After all, just like the child I carried, they were all the product of his savage lust. His own blood surged through their bodies. But those seeds began to sprout strong roots in my mind in the shape of real fear. I was afraid for my darlings. I imagined them being separated and sold away to an even harsher life than they had known. Was this my fault? If I had worked harder that day in the field, I wouldn't have been beaten. My disobedience was responsible for the loss of my children. I lied every time I said I left that plantation and never looked back. I did look back. In fact, I turned myself around and started running back to the only life I had ever known, to those who loved me and whom I loved, to my sweet children. I had to make sure that my babies would be okay. That's when I was struck by revelation. It stopped me in my tracks and forced me to sink down in the blackness onto the damp moss under a large oak tree. I can only believe that there was an angel of the Almighty that whispered the truth to me. A truth that now, after years of freedom and education, is obvious. Some might even describe it as common sense. But at that moment, it was a bright light being shined into what had been complete darkness. My children were not mine, and never were. Back on plantation, only Master and his white family could truly call anything theirs. Every rock, plow, animal, and slave was simply owned. As much as my heart ached to see to the well-being of my children and loved ones, their fate was not in my hands, and only freedom would place that of my unborn child within their grasp. I sat on that cold, wet spot just a-pondering and grieving until just before dawn. It was only my naive conviction to do whatever was necessary to raise the money to redeem my children from bondage that finally got me off the ground and allowed me to set my body once again in the direction of freedom.
I'm sorry, Nana.
Thank you, sweetheart. But I'm not telling you all this for sympathy. The only reason I didn't tell the whole truth long ago was because I had convinced myself that it was better for my fatherless son to see me as an example of the necessity, when called for, to be unwaveringly strong. Can you forgive me, James?
Of course, Mother.
But now, I think it's more important for each of you to know my understanding of the powerful and far-reaching hand of slavery. It's a demon that infects the soul of both slave owner and slave alike. It can only be exercised by freedom of both body and mind. So it will lie, seduce, ignore, deny, and violently attack any attempt to force freedom's presence. Because once present, freedom only needs time in order to win complete victory.
But how can you not now join in support of a man who, if elected, will do all in his power to make freedom present and end this too long-endured nightmare of suffering?
I never said I didn't support him in his goal to end slavery, but I stand firm in my belief that Mr. Lincoln and his Republican Party does not stand a chance of winning. The South holds the power in both houses. The Supreme Court is unquestionably pro-slavery, and President Buchanan has built and maintained his foundation of wealthy slave-owning supporters by reacting positively to every item of pro-slavery legislation that crosses his desk.
You have always acknowledged the power of faith, prayer, and action to make the possible out of impossible. Why not now?
James, it's the fact that I have lived in bondage. And that experience, combined with the blessings of an education, both academic and worldly, has made it clear to me that the back of slavery in this country might never be broken. In fact, the Dred Scott decision could result in the spread of slavery to all the territories, and possibly a return to the North. It boils down to three indisputable truths about mankind's corruptibility. Absolute, most often tyrannical power corrupts. Immense wealth corrupts. The inexhaustible availability of sex with impunity corrupts. The majority of men would find it quite difficult to relinquish just one without resistance. Even more would freely put their very lives on the line to retain all three.
Days might put their lives on the line to keep it going, but like I say before, I'd be willing to put my life on the line to break it.
And Harold is just one of thousands with such convictions. Lincoln is the key. His election is imperative, and war will be the price of freedom.
That's the price I'm willing to pay.
Neither Malvina or Lavinia had given any thought to the prospect of J.W. choosing to join in a possible war.
Even if Lincoln arms every Negro man of fighting age in the North, it won't be enough to win a civil war without white men who are willing to fight as well, to fight to the death. Do you believe that enough Northern white men would be willing to do so for the sake of the black man? Regardless of how many white fathers and mothers harbor a deep sympathy for the suffering of the slave, how many would send their sons to die to end that suffering?
I can't argue against you, Lavinia. I suppose what you are saying might be true. Nonetheless, I have chosen to have faith in the ability of Abraham Lincoln to overcome any obstacle to his election. I have heard him speak, and I found him to be uniquely intelligent and filled with the spirit of righteousness.
But can a country lawyer, admittedly a hugely charismatic country lawyer, really have the political savvy to hack his way through the mere impenetrable jungle of slave owners and slave supporters that have taken root in Washington?
I don't know.
Us niggers as a people ain't got a chance to win our freedom.
Sadie, don't allow yourself to believe that.
There is a knock at the front door. Catherine answers.
Lewis, join us. We were just discussing Lincoln's chances of being elected. Would you like breakfast? Coffee?
No, thank you. I've already had my breakfast. Hello, everyone.
Is everything all right?
I bring what I hope will be received as good news regarding Harold.
What be the news, Mr. Tappan?
Harold, I have been able to obtain the promise of a very nice position for you as an apprentice butcher for Mr. Thomas Wirt.
So quickly?
I can't hardly believe it. We's been to New York just 2 days, and we's got a plates.
That's wonderful.
Congratulations.
Hold on. There is something about this position that may not be to your liking.
What you means, Mr. Tappan?
Mr. Wirt specializes in providing the freshest and highest quality meat for an exclusive clientele. Thomas is a good man. He supports our cause and is willing to do what he can to help, but he is also a businessman with a family to care for. That being said, he is agreeable to taking you on as an apprentice for a more than livable wage, and teach you every aspect of his vocation. However, the prospect of having a Negro, at least a man known to be a Negro, working in his shop would be unacceptable to him, only because it would be unacceptable to many of his customers.
Mr. Tappan, you's telling me I's got to say I's a white man.
There would be no need for you to say that you are right. You would only be required to never admit that you are a Negro.
Far as I can see, that'd be the same thing. And what about Sadie? She can't say she white, and chances be that the baby won't be white enough neither.
The relationship with your cousins would have to be maintained under the condition of strict discretion. You don't have to give me an answer this moment, Harold. Think about it a few days. Weigh the good and the bad of it.
I was grateful for that, Mr. Tappan. But I don't need a few days to tell you I could never live a life of lies that deny who I is. Lies that say my mammy, my grandmammy, my great-grandmammy, and all the suffering they went through don't matter. Or pretend that Sadie and the baby ain't the most important folks in this world to me.
Harold, I understand your feelings, but you obviously don't understand how fortunate you are to receive such an offer. You insist on not passing as a white man, but the very fact that you can pass as white might be the very key to the kind of security that is unimaginable to most of your darker-skinned brethren. Accepting this apprenticeship would give you the means to provide for Sadie and her child with little danger of finding yourself in the precarious position of losing home and sustenance from one day to the next, not to mention the added layers of safety from those bounty-hungry slave catchers. James, you must back me up here.
I understand what you are saying, my friend.
You see, Harold.
But, Lewis, I must accept and respect whatever choice Harold makes. Although only newly free, it is apparent to me that he has harbored the spirit of freedom for some time, and I, for one, will not add to the inevitable assaults that will be placed on that spirit despite his residence in the North.
Are you suggesting that my encouragement of Harold to accept this offer amounts to an assault on his freedom?
No. I don't have the slightest doubt that you desire only what is best for him. But would you be willing to deny your forefathers, deny their accomplishments and sacrifices, the foundations of all that you are for the guarantee of financial and physical security?
Many have.
Regardless of the choices of anyone else, would you be willing to make such a choice?
All right, Harold. I will inform Mr. Wirt of your decision.
Like I say, Mr. Tappan, I sure grateful that you be working hard to see that me and Sadie's taken care of.
I don't doubt that. I'm now even more determined to find your position that is suitable. I think I will have that coffee after all.
Sadie jumps out of her chair.
I be getting for you right now.
She pours a cup of coffee and quickly delivers it to Tappan.
There you be, massa.
Tappan is taken aback by Sadie's display of servitude, referring to him as massa. He doesn't want to take the cup, but finally does. Sadie suddenly realizes and is ashamed.
Oh, darling.
Harold moves to comfort Sadie and return her to her seat. Act 2, Scene 1. James is being paid a visit by Bingham. Catherine places a tray with coffee for two on one of the living room tables.
Thank you, Catherine.
Bingham eyes Catherine curiously. She exits.
Cream, sugar?
1 sugar, please. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to meet with me.
I'll admit I was more than a bit surprised to receive your request, Mr. Bingham. But I welcome the opportunity for us to find common ground.
Well, I'll get straight to the point. There is a movement stirring amongst a faction of what would be best described as the Negro artisan class of Gotham. Its mission is to grow support for what is hoped will be several united townships throughout the free states, populated alone by Negroes. They would be run and maintained by its black citizens and made profitable through their skilled talents, while existing with as much autonomy from the white majority as possible. As the movement's representative, I am seeking your support, as well as the support of every member of the Negro elite.
A separatist movement? I'm afraid that separating from the rest of the population of the United States, although having the possibility of some positive outcomes, will undoubtedly lead to greater mistrust from the powers that be, and serve to enhance the perception of the black population as enemies.
Dr. Smith, how can we be perceived as more of an enemy than we already are?
By severing invaluable ties to the multitude of white citizens that do not share that opinion of us. Doing so would place an impenetrable block across the road that leads to integration into every level of this society.
I'm surprised by your childlike trust in the capacity for racial inclusion in America. From what I have experienced, that trust is unfounded.
I suppose our experiences have had their differences.
Bingham looks around the room.
Yes, I can see that. In fact, perhaps I should not expect that living as you do, employing as a housekeeper a woman that is in my estimation undoubtedly white, and occupying what is unquestionably the pinnacle of voting influence and affluence possible for a Negro, you should have any substantial sense of being the enemy.
Mr. Bingham, I was not present for your critical speech at the society celebration, but I am well aware of your contemptible opinion of me and my colleagues. You seem to be under the impression that all you see here came easily, simply a result of my cooperation with some collective white entity whose mission it is to maintain superiority, and has chosen me to be nothing more than one of its tools to keep the majority of our brethren in their place. Let me enlighten you to the facts. What I have accomplished has been in spite of mighty forces bent on destroying all paths to my success. A success that owes its actuality to the support of many, both black and white, who made it their mission to see that I was afforded the opportunities that I deserved. Outside the walls of this house, real freedom for me or any member of my family is far from being realized. I am acutely aware of the position of the Negro in this land. You are obviously an educated man. Where did you attend school?
The New York African Free School.
As did I. And although my presence there was several years before yours, I am sure that you were never made to feel by any of the faculty, regardless of their race, that you should accept as impossible any ambition your desires might formulate.
However, I became quickly aware after leaving that it would have served me better if they had prepared me to accept that all but very few ambitions of any Negro in this country are impossible, or so close to being impossible that crushing disappointment will be the result of its pursuit. Except for the 1%, or much more probably less than 1%, that by chance luck managed to accomplish their ambition.
The 1% today will increase after abolition, and with God's help grow steadily with each passing decade.
What makes you so sure that the end of slavery will ever come?
Faith in the godly righteousness of the soul of mankind.
It's apparent that my time here has been wasted. You are simply unable to see the immense freedom that would be afforded to our people by owning and profiting from what would be theirs alone, in control of what we do and how we do it, definers of our own destiny.
I agreed to this meeting in the hopes of building bridges. Our goals are ultimately the same. My colleagues and I want nothing more than to see the Africans of this land defining not only their own destiny, but playing a decisive role in the defining path of the entire country. But to attempt to separate ourselves, to ostensibly create our own nation within the confines of this continent, will bring only fleeting freedom, eventually igniting an explosion of mistrust, hatred, and envy that we alone will not be able to combat, resulting in our complete annihilation.
Good day, Dr. Smith.
Good day, Mr. Bingham.
You are a fool.
Act 2, Scene 2. Late afternoon. Malvina is teaching Harold and Sadie from a McGuffey reader, the eclectic first reader for young children.
The boys run fast. They run as fast as they can. Only
One
of the boys has no hat.
Very good. Sadie, would you continue?
Here is a small dog. He has the boy's hat. The boys cannot get it.
Excellent. You're both doing very well. I say this is a good place to stop. We'll pick up again tomorrow. That is, if you are still willing to continue these lessons.
I say we both willing, missus. If you truly be not too put off by how slow Harold and me doing this here reading.
My dear, it is a blessing to be in a position to provide education to those who have been denied it.
You minds if I ask you what school let in Negroes to be teaching them how to be doctors?
None in this land, Harold. James was forced to cross an ocean to attend Glasgow University in a country called Scotland in order to earn a doctorate in medicine. He is in fact the first of our people to do so. Sadie, when is your child due?
Well, missus, I ain't sure, but I thinks I done seen 6 full moons since I knowed I was gonna have this here baby. Harold, do you remember just how long it's been since I got this here child in my belly?
I don't rightly know, but you look to be about 6-7 months for sure.
Who is the father of your baby?
Sadie is embarrassed by the question.
Master?
My dear, this situation was forced upon you regardless of your own desire. Do you have other children?
No.
Then you have been spared the heartache of having children that are out of your reach.
That'd be a blessing for sure.
And thank God we will both bring another freeborn Negro into the world.
Catherine enters from the kitchen.
Yes'm. Thank the Lord.
Well, is the lesson over for now?
Yes, Catherine.
Who'll be wanting a glass of lemonade?
Thank you, but I am going to go lay down for a bit. Please enjoy yourselves. Catherine makes excellent lemonade. Did Dr. Smith say what time he would be returning?
About 5 o'clock.
We better have dinner at 6:30 just to be sure.
Yes, ma'am. Are you all right?
Yes, if all of you will excuse me.
Malvina heads upstairs.
Now, you both be wanting a glass of lemonade?
Yes'm.
Harold nods. Catherine exits.
Thang sure is nice for us here, ain't it?
They sure is.
You know we can't stay here forever. We's gonna have to make a place for ourselves soon, with or without Mr. Tappan's help.
I know that. Hell, I've been thinking that maybe you should take that job that he already got for you. Least to be a sure thing.
Sadie!
I understand how you feel about claiming you's white, but it don't have to be for good. Once you finish your learning, you could maybe open up your own shop as a Negro man. I sure Dr. Smith and Mr. Tappan could help you. Then I'd have time to be with the baby without having to worry about food or a place to stay. And we'd be more safe from the slave catchers. I can't go back to that plantation, Harold. I'd be better off dead, me and the baby.
Sadie, you ain't going back, I promise you. You gotta trust me on this. Going to that place where I be pretending I was white would do nothing but bring dark clouds over us. The spirit of our great-grandmammy and the spirits of all our crossed-over slave kin is protecting you and me, and the baby. I can feels it.
I just hope Mr. Tappan can find us a place that's safe.
I sure he will. Everything gonna be fine, Sadie, as long as you and me stick out whatever come together.
Sadie smiles. Catherine enters with a tray holding a pitcher of lemonade and 3 full glasses.
Here we go.
She gives Sadie and Harold a glass, and then joins them with the third.
This be some mighty good lemonade, Miss Catherine.
Yeah, mighty good.
Now, Harold, please, no more Miss, just Catherine.
Forgot again, Catherine.
Y'all be from Ioland, right, Catherine? How long you been working for Dr. Smith and his family?
A little over 2 years now.
I'd just love to know how it come about that you work in this house. Did you cross the sea knowing that you had a job here?
Oh no, Sadie. I crossed the sea with nothing but hope and enough money to feed myself for 1 week. I was one scared creature stepping off that steamer. Then after being processed at Castle Garden, I was immediately approached by an Irishman as I left the building, speaking Gaelic and seeming friendly. But I found out soon enough that I was quite lucky to be pulled away from him by my cousin Fiona, who had come to meet me. It turned out that Irish fella was in the business of conning or bullying the newly arrived out of every penny they had, and then leaving them to wander the streets with nothing.
You that's a cousin here to help look after you?
Well, at that moment she certainly did look after me, yes. I took that bit of luck as a sign that things would be all right for me in America. Number 1 was finding a job. I had left Ireland with the intention of finding work as a maid like Fiona, but it was a more difficult task than I had thought. My cousin warned me that most of those families advertising for maids wanted Protestant girls, and me being of the Catholic faith meant I most often wouldn't even be considered. Turned out Fiona was right. I soon realised that my luck at escaping the clutches of that conning Irishman was quickly running out. I would have soon been roaming the streets with not a penny, forced to do God knows what if it hadn't been for Dr. Smith and the missus.
But how'd you even find each other?
I was looking through all the ads in the usual papers and just happened to see one of those papers published by Negroes. I figured I'd had nothing to lose just by looking inside, and I found the ad placed by Dr. Smith. His was the only one that didn't start with the word seeking Negro maid. I was sure it was just a mistake, but at that point I was willing to try almost anything to get work.
Law, was they surprised to see you show up?
Oh yes, they were quite shocked and suspicious. They seemed to relax a bit after I told them all what I'd been through since arriving in New York. They asked me a lot of questions that had nothing to do with housekeeping and everything to do with my feelings about Negroes and slavery. I told them I was aware of slavery here in America, and I also knew there was often fights between the Irish and Negroes. I told them that I came from a place where the dreams and happiness of one group were held far above even the most bare needs and joys of another. The result had often been fighting among us for just enough to eat, and that's been going on for over 200 years. I also told them the story of my grandmother Eliza Fenning, who was executed in London at age 25 for poisoning to death 3 members of the family she worked for. 14 years later, a Mr. Robert Turner made a deathbed confession that it had been him that had done the killings. At the time of my grandmother's trial, the little evidence against her was combined with the feeling that she had to be guilty because she was Irish and Catholic. It was also the opinion of the authorities that servants were not to be trusted, that they were evil, cunning, and always capable of murder. So an innocent woman who had a young child was hung. I may not be able to end the ugliness of prejudice and oppression, but like I told Dr. Smith and the missus, I can sure make a point to never be a part of keeping it going. In America, like Ireland, there's enough to fulfill the needs of everyone. It's the freedom to obtain those things that make all the difference. I didn't have that freedom back home, and even if America isn't the total paradise I dreamt of, it's 100 times better here than there. The Smiths decided they were willing to give it a try, and I was happy to finally find work, and at a pretty decent wage, I might add.
Weren't you afraid what folks around here would say or do if they see a white girl working as maid to Negroes?
Not so much afraid, but I did try to figure out what I'd do if confronted. Then after meeting several friends of the Dr. and Mrs. who I thought were white, but turned out to be Negro, I realized that the best thing for me was to claim that I was a Negro if asked by a stranger. It worked. Surprisingly, they believed me despite my Irish way of talking. Dr. Smith said that most whites would find it impossible to believe that any white person would claim to be a Negro if they weren't.
What about your cousin? She knows you ain't no Negro.
You're right. Fiona is one of the few white people in New York who know the truth about me, besides Mr. Tappan and others like him, abolitionists. But Fiona hasn't seen or contacted me since she found out I was working here. And she won't dare tell anyone about me, out of embarrassment mostly, but maybe a little out of concern for my safety. I hope. Looks like we lost Sadie.
Sadie, wake up. Sadie.
Oh, I's sorry. I's plumb took it out. All of a sudden like.
It's probably the child you're carrying.
You're surely right about that, Catherine. This here baby been giving me bouts of tiredness for the past week.
Why don't you go downstairs and rest for a bit? I'll call you when dinner be ready.
All right. Sure be good talking to you, Catherine.
Have a good rest.
I knows I will.
Sadie exits.
Would you like more lemonade, Harold?
Yes'm. Thank ye.
You know, if I had never talked to you and just saw you walking down the street, I might ask you if your name was Grellis. You look so much like several of my family back home.
I suppose I looks like a lot of white folks' family.
Like I said, I've seen friends of the Smiths that appear to be white but call themselves Negro. And if you study them closely, you can see at least a little bit of Negro in them. But Harold, you don't have that trace, at least as far as I can see.
Back home on the plantation, all the other plantations round there, you see lots of slaves and look like me. Some even brighter, but we's all just niggers to the white folk. Sometimes they calls us white nigger or white mulatto nigger, but always a nigger. A white man always be a free man, never a slave. And ours was a slave.
Did you tell me how you and Sadie became cousins?
Sadie and me got the same great-grandpappy and great-grandmammy. Old Massa and his full-blooded African slave named Josephine. She come to the plantation right off the boat, meaning that old Massa be her first massa. She was real pretty, so it wa'n't long before Massa come a visit in her cabin when all was supposed to be sleep, and Josephine soon had a boy child named Drummond, who be Sadie's grandpappy. Josephine then had a girl child by Massa named Eliza, who be my grandmammy.
Eliza. Do you realize that our grandmothers had the same name?
Yes, I marked that soon as you say your grandmamma's name.
I don't know. Go on, please.
Massa let Drummond marry a mulatto slave called Sally, and they had a girl child named Rebecca, who be Sadie's mammy. Rebecca married a slave named Willie, who be Sadie's pappy. My grandmammy, Eliza, had a girl child by old massa named Lily, who be my mammy.
Wasn't Eliza the old master's daughter?
Yes'm, I suppose she was, but massa never claimed his slave children as his own. Well, my po' mammy catched the eye of old master's son, and that's how I come to be.
It's hard for me to get my mind round it. But in just 4 generations, you who are almost completely white are cousins by blood to a woman who is almost completely black.
Yes'm.
And there are many slaves just like you say.
Yes'm, Catherine. Massa and most of the other white men gets a hankering for a slave, or they might be hired by the plantation in order to breed with one of his slaves, and soon enough you got yourself white niggers.
Harold, by the grace of God, you and Sadie are free from that horror.
A muffled scream is heard coming from upstairs.
That be the mistress.
Harold, wait.
Somebody gotta go make sure she okay.
No harm has come to her. She just had a nightmare.
How you know that?
She has the same nightmare quite often. Believe me, there's nothing you can do.
What the nightmare be about?
Her 2 youngest children, little Henry and Amy.
She got 2 other children? Where they be?
Apparently no one is sure what became of them. It happened some 4 years before I began working here, but my understanding is she had taken the youngsters out shopping, and in an instant that she wasn't looking, they disappeared.
Lord Almighty. They never find nobody that saw what happened?
No. If anyone did see, they have yet to come forward. The police conducted an investigation after being pressured by Mr. Tappan and his circle, but nothing was ever discovered of the children or who took them.
I sure am sorry for the missus. I suppose she get them nightmares 'cause she blame herself.
Yes, Harold. But that's only the half of it. Many little ones in the north, free Negro children, are kidnapped by slave traders and taken south to be sold. It's the fear of this, of her little darlings alive and living in bondage, that causes the most pain.
James comes home, carrying his doctor's bag.
Good evening, Doctor. Dinner will be ready in an hour.
Hello, Catherine. That's fine. Harold, how was your day? I hope Malvina wasn't too strict in her reading lessons.
No, sir. Your wife be a fine teacher. Me and Sadie happy to be learning.
Malvina calls from upstairs.
James, is that you?
Yes, my dear. I'm happy to hear that, Harold. It's truly a blessing.
Would you come upstairs, please?
I'm on my way. That tone demands my immediate attention. Oh, Catherine, Dr. White and Mr. Tappan will be paying a visit after dinner. Philip has a plan that he insists will have a profound effect on the upcoming election.
Brandy?
Yes, and don't forget a bottle of Grant's for Mr. Tappan.
Scotch whiskey for Mr. Tappan.
Thank you.
James, I need you now.
If you'll excuse me.
James starts up the stairs, then stops.
Harold, why don't you join us after dinner? We would all be pleased to have you there.
Well, if you're gonna please y'all, Dr. Smith, I'll be there.
Wonderful.
James continues upstairs. Harold watches Dr. Smith. Catherine's eyes are on Harold. Sensing Catherine's gaze, he turns to face her. Their eyes meet. Catherine looks away. Act 2, Scene 3. Later that evening. James is pouring himself a brandy. J.W. pulls a letter from his breast pocket and holds it accusingly.
Where did you get that?
It was sitting right on top of your desk. How could you be so careless?
I regret you found that.
I'm glad that it was me and not Mom. She does have occasion to go into your office. If she found this, it might kill her. You gave me your word before God that you would never again give in to this kind of temptation.
Would you keep your voice down? I have kept my word. You are reading something into that correspondence that is not there. I understand your desire to protect your mother, but I assure you that your suspicions regarding my continued fidelity are unfounded. That note is nothing more than a grateful thank you from a lonely young woman to whom I was able to give insightful advice that spared her reputation unmendable damage.
That explanation sounds distinctly familiar to your past denials.
All right, son. Obviously past transgressions are not so easily forgotten. Read the letter to me.
Dearest Dr. Smith, I pray that this letter finds you in good health and spirits. It's been 2 weeks since our last meeting, yet the profound awakening that was stirred within my soul continues to linger unabated. Your wise and gentle affection will be forever appreciated.
The girl had convinced herself that she was in love with me. 2 weeks ago she revealed that to me. She speaks of my gentle rejection of her desires and my success in bringing clarity to her heart and mind regarding not only the impossibility of her proposal, but the lifelong social consequences she would endure if such a liaison were to become known. I'll admit that her choice of words is somewhat dramatic, but your own experiences with some of the older girls at the orphanage should have taught you that such characteristics are to be expected. Read the rest of it.
Forgive me, but I must admit, in spite of your insistence that I purge such destructive thoughts, that I have yet to completely conquer the shame of my actions. But the knowledge and assured trust that I bear in your promised discretion brings me immense comfort. I thank God that my reputation has found safe sanctuary within your loving heart. Affectionately, Olivia. I suppose her explanation does make sense.
Well, thank God for that. I hope the trust I had assumed was unquestionable is restored.
J.W. nods yes.
The maddening sorrow at losing my youngest son and daughter did lead me to take cruel actions to hurt my wife. But there is no valid excuse for what I did. Every day I say a grateful prayer that thanks to you and Philip, your blameless mother was spared any knowledge of my disloyalty. I think you are aware of how deeply sorry I am that you were not spared the pain of that knowledge. What you are not fully aware of is the complete scope of the heart-breaking wound my irresponsibility caused to a very sweet, naive, illiterate girl. I will never be free of the regret or guilt regarding that destructive episode.
J.W. returns the letter to James.
I'm sorry, Dad.
Give me your hand, son. You have my word, man to man, that you need never again question the veracity of my loyalty to your mother.
All right.
I need another brandy.
I'll join you.
James pours a drink for them both.
I can think of only 2 Olivias that would...
Stop right there. I forbid any further speculation as to the identity of this woman. She has complete confidence in my discretion. I am morally bound to prevent even the slightest crack in that confidence.
Not another word.
There is a knock at the front door. J.W. answers. It is Philip. He carries a medium-sized valise.
Hello, J.W. It's been some time. You look well.
Thank you, Dr. White. It's good to see you.
We've been anxiously anticipating your arrival. Very curious about your proposal.
Has Louis arrived?
Not yet.
Then I must test your patience a bit longer. I don't want to say anything until he's present, but I would love a brandy.
I'll get it.
J.W., you are more man every time I see you. How is your work going?
Very well. The entire faculty seems dedicated to having a positive effect in the lives of those orphans.
Splendid. With your help, that sanctuary will produce many men and women with the strength of mind, body, and soul that will drive our struggles forward.
Harold enters from the basement.
Come in, Harold. Philip, this is one of our guests. Harold, this is Dr. Philip White, my closest friend and colleague.
Hello, Harold. It's a pleasure. Welcome to freedom.
I sure enough thank you. Sadie and me been feeling nothing but welcome since we got to Dr. Smith's place.
James, I consider Harold's presence this evening divine providence. You will understand what I mean once you hear what I have to propose.
There is a knock at the door.
That's Louis. J.W., would you answer?
Mr. Tappan, come in.
Hello, J.W.
Louis, welcome. You haven't missed anything. Philip refused to say a word until you arrived.
James, Philip, please excuse my tardiness. Hello, Harold.
You ready for a scotch?
Absolutely.
Right away.
Now, Philip, please let us in on what's been brewing in your mind.
J.W. hands Tappan his scotch.
Yes, let's hear it.
Philip pulls a book out of his jacket pocket.
Gentlemen, this book is the key that will ensure that the free states, and I mean white men, will rise to take up arms and fight to the extent of sacrificing their lives to end slavery in the United States.
What is the title of this miraculous literature, and who is its author?
The author is George Fitzhugh, and the title is Sociology for the South, The Failure of Free Society.
Fitzhugh? That maniac?
Yes, that maniac, with the hard-to-believe conviction that slavery in this country should not be confined to those men and women who are descendants of Africa, but should also include poor, laboring whites who fall into debt and their families, as well as the newly arrived descendants of Ireland and Germany.
The man is on the fringe. No one is taking his ideals seriously.
Very few in the North, perhaps, but in the South, George Fitzhugh is taken very seriously. At this moment, this book holds the position of being the most widely read amongst the Southern gentry. Excerpts have begun to appear in newspapers all across the slaveholding states.
And they support the enslavement of free white men and women?
Yes.
Philip, are you sure?
Absolutely. Let me show you something.
He reaches into his valise to pull out a stack of newspapers and published congressional sessions.
The Richmond Enquirer, July of this year. Nature has made the weak in body and mind slaves. Men are not born to equal rights.
How does that speak to the enslavement of whites?
One moment, there's more. On the same page, a little further down, is an article entitled White Slaves Next. It would be well for the Germans and Irish to remember the words of Robert Wycliffe, the prominent Kentucky delegate, referring to the probable extension of slavery to the territories and the demand for slave labor that would arise. He said that if there were not niggers enough, he was in favor of making slaves of the damned Irish and Germans.
As the country grows west, its slavery grows with it. There won't be enough Negro slaves to keep up with the demand for labor.
Yes, James. And the Dred Scott decision has guaranteed to preserve the ownership of human property, regardless of where the owner and slave might travel or live. Mr. Scott's valiant but unsuccessful fight for his own freedom might turn out to be one of the keys that unlocks the door to freedom for all American slaves. Listen to this, printed in the Muskogee Herald, an Alabama newspaper. We do not adopt the theory that Ham was the ancestor of the Negro race. The Jewish slaves were not Negroes, and to confine the jurisdiction of slavery to that race would be to weaken its scriptural authority, for we read of no Negro slavery in ancient time. Slavery, black or white, is necessary.
The ravings of a few misguided lunatics will never be taken as anything more than a source of fantastical entertainment by any rational thinking Southerner. Do these idiots have a plan through which this madness might be accomplished?
Oh, yes. For example, here is an article printed in the New York Day Book, one of the two papers in this city that support our slavery-loving President Buchanan. We propose to enslave all poor Americans, all Germans, and all Irish, who may fall into poverty and be unable to support their families. Let our legislature pass a law that whoever will take these parents and their offspring, care for them in sickness and in health, clothe them, feed them, and house them, shall be legally entitled to their service as long as they live.
Is this issue really being considered within our houses of government?
It's been given a good deal of consideration, J.W. Besides Mr. Wycliffe of Kentucky, Senator Solomon Downs of Louisiana calls upon the opponents of slavery to prove that the white laborers of the North are as happy as contented, or as comfortable as the slaves of the South. In the South, slaves do not suffer 1/10 of the evils endured by the white laborers of the North. Poverty is unknown to the slave, for as soon as the master of slaves becomes too poor to provide for them, he sells them to others who can take care of them. Another Southern senator argues that slavery should not be confined to color, but that the laboring classes everywhere should be slaves. Should this doctrine prevail, we would find New York and Philadelphia, Boston too perhaps, converted into black and white slave markets, which would equal, if they did not surpass, those of Charleston and New Orleans.
It's unbelievable. Impossible.
Far from impossible, Louis. The culture of slavery in this country has always included white chattel. They just aren't referred to as such. Look at Harold. Harold, did anyone during your bondage ever refer to you as a white man?
No, sir.
You were always called a nigger, sometimes a white nigger, am I right?
Yes, sir. No matter what might be put with it, it always got the nigger.
Now, I'm sure it's more than obvious to all of us that if it weren't for Southern Partis law, Harold would have been born as part of the white community. Harold, are you familiar with Partis law?
Can't say I is, Dr. White.
J.W., would you give a brief explanation?
In short, Partis law states that the condition of any offspring shall follow the condition of its mother.
Meaning, if your mother is a slave, then you are a slave, even though you might be as white as our founding fathers. This law was adopted in 1662. Considering the Southern noblemen's unquenchable lust for their human property and the round-the-clock visitations by many Southern men to the slave brothels, I'm sure it's not hard to imagine the multitudes of slaves that are as white or even whiter than Harold. Can you tell us, were there many slaves like yourself on the plantation?
I figure it'd be about 20 as bright as me. And that'd be about the same or more on the other plantation that'd be around now.
Multiply that by the thousands of plantations throughout the South, and let's not forget the uncountable smaller slave-owning farmers, and you can see clearly that the idea of a white person, or at least a person that appears white, being a slave, is a reality.
Your plan is to make this issue common knowledge in the North.
Yes, amongst every white man and woman of the laboring class, whether they can read or not.
How?
Through relentless bombardment via the anti-slavery newspapers, the distribution of thousands of printed broadsides, and an army of sympathetic volunteers, mostly white, to bring this issue by word of mouth to the ears of the illiterate.
We should reprint the very Southern articles you have there, making sure to state the source along with the exact date of its original printing.
Yes, excellent idea.
Louis, are you in agreement with this plan? Your help would be essential, especially in securing the large number of white volunteers needed.
Of course. I'll do all that I can.
Then it is decided. Shall we seek God's blessing in this agreement?
Absolutely.
James motions all to the center of the room. All move except Tappan and Harold.
Louis, are you all right?
Yes.
He moves to join the circle.
Harold, I hope you are with us as well. We can use the focus of every mind and hand we can gather.
I'll be with you, Dr. Smith, with all y'all.
Blessed Lord, we ask for your all-seeing guidance in this crucial endeavor. Give us the wisdom and the means to bring about the absolute success of our mission and keep us free from any doubt as to its rectitude. In the name of your Holy Son and our sacred Savior. Amen.
Amen.
Act 3, Scene 1. Tappan has disappeared.
This doesn't make sense. The abolitionist cause is the focus of his life, especially since the death of his wife. It's everything to him.
I hesitate to say it, but I suspect that this idea of whites, real whites, being made slaves in America has offended him more deeply than he let on. Louis was obviously troubled by the prospect of the South welcoming the concept of forcing white men into slavery. If my suspicion is fact, then we should be ready to accept that he has turned his back on his promise to support our mission. He's well aware that without access to the many hundreds of whites loyal to him to participate, we cannot succeed.
I'm sure you are mistaken.
That is admirable, James. You are a faithful soul. But even you have fallen victim to your own human frailties. We all have our limits. I think Lewis has arrived at his. What has always been intrinsic in the fabric of this democracy is the clearly reinforced doctrine that the white man is several levels above the black man. For the wealthy, that notion is even more sharply defined. It would be impossible for Lewis, or perhaps any white American, to escape its effects.
You and I have had a productive relationship with Lewis Tappan for over 15 years. We've accomplished a great deal with his help. He has proven himself to be not only a loyal friend, but also unwaveringly ferocious in his dedication to the cause. Don't forget that his own home was ransacked and set on fire as a result of his support for abolition.
Well, I would call his thinly veiled reaction to our present mission a distinct signal that he has wavered. Have you ever considered that we are too dependent on Mr. Tappan? He is the only prominent abolitionist of great wealth with whom you and I are closely associated.
James is speechless.
Perhaps Mr. Bingham's words do hold truth where the racial hierarchy of this land is concerned. The white, paternalistic benefactors of the Negro undoubtedly desire an end to slavery in America. However, they use assuring words such as uplift and elevate to fool the African into believing that not only freedom, but also equality is within his reach. Yet their true intentions focus entirely on doing all that must be done to ensure the status quo.
James goes to the basement door.
Harold,
Yes, sir, Dr. Smith.
are you able to join us for a moment?
Yes, sir, as we ride up.
Until we are able to locate Lewis and speak with him, I will continue to afford him the benefit of the doubt as to the true motives that guide his actions. His years of loyalty and dedicated patronage is a testament to his deserving at least that.
Harold enters.
Harold, we are still unable to locate Mr. Tappan. Philip and I have regretfully come to the conclusion that for now at least we must abandon all aspects of our mission that include his participation.
I better say I ain't surprised, though days be long enough time to wait.
Every day that passes brings us closer to Election Day, and is one more day gone without our efforts to assist in effecting its outcome.
We'll just have to come up with another plan. Without Tappan, our options are limited. But if we put our heads together, perhaps, God willing, we can devise something worthwhile.
Let's meet here tomorrow in the early afternoon. I will arrange to have leading members of the Negro community in attendance along with my son. And since desperate situations demand unusual measures, I will invite my mother and wife, perhaps even Catherine and Sadie as well.
Till tomorrow, then. Good night, James. Harold.
Good night.
Evening to you, Dr. White.
Philip opens the door to exit, discovers Tappan, exhausted.
Lewis.
Thank God. Are you all right?
Physically, yes.
Tappan is wobbly. Philip takes his arm.
You seem weak.
Philip helps Tappan to a chair.
I suppose I am. I haven't eaten much since I last saw you.
I'll have Catherine bring you something.
Please, I don't want any food. If you have a glass of water.
Of course.
Hello, Harold.
I sure am glad to see you, Mr. Tappan.
We are happy and relieved that you are safe, not to mention rather curious as to your whereabouts these past 4 days.
James delivers a glass of water.
I know.
Can you tell us where you've been? Did something happen to you?
I made a discovery.
What discovery?
Philip, do you remember the speech I gave at the Society's celebration?
You gave an oration denouncing the often violent racism suffered by Northern Negroes, despite our somewhat ironic title of freemen.
That's right. But I also included my observations of the serious damage to many free Negroes caused by belief, often unconscious, in their own inferiority.
Oh yes, I remember.
When I arrived home after our last meeting, my heart continued to struggle with the revelations that had been presented. but I was unable to grasp why. I wasn't in my study for more than half an hour before deciding to re-enter the cold darkness of that night for what I hoped would be an illuminating stroll around the area of my residence. As my thoughts deepened, I took to wandering obliviously, eventually realizing that I had left the enclave of great houses that I call home to find myself in the area of the city where the desperation of its inhabitants did not bode well for my safety.
You didn't walk all the way to 5 Points, did you? In the middle of the night?
Yes. However, somehow my composure remained as unshaken as any of the unfortunates that call 5 Points home.
The sun at its highest point gives no assurance of safety to anyone within the boundaries of that squalor.
I know now that I was in the protective hands of our Savior. I felt no fear. I spent the better part of 2 hours observing the comings and goings of the nocturnal residents, both black and white, who inhabit those streets. My eyes and ears were fed an ample serving of the profanity, immorality, and bloody violence that is their continual reality. I then became aware of a creeping disgust that entered my heart, seemingly against my will. It blocked out pure Christian sympathy and erased any comprehension of the origins of social degradation. I was, at first, able to convince myself that my reaction reflected nothing more than my being unaccustomed to such a scene. Then my soul was shown the truth, the realization that made it obvious to me that I had been led to 5 Points not by chance, but by divine guidance. I discovered that I am not only capable, but guilty of what I have always loathed amongst many of my white brethren: the unwavering conviction, despite various levels of sincere sympathy for the plight of other races, that the white race is undeniably superior. Like the destruction caused by any individual's acceptance that they are inferior, I had been dangerously diminished by the unconscious belief in my own racial superiority.
I'm sorry that this revelation has affected you so deeply. I can attest for myself, and I have little doubt, that all of us here have experienced thoughts and feelings that derive from something other than a pure Christian heart.
It's more than just a fleeting thought. It strikes much deeper than that.
I'm confused. You witnessed the deprivation of both black and white citizens in 5 Points. How did you come to the conclusion that your aversion, your disgust, as you call it, was due to a newly recognized capacity to believe in the racial superiority of whites?
That's what is most shameful about the entire distressing experience. The propensity of one's dark beliefs to create whatever scenario is necessary to confirm their veracity. While observing that moral desolation, it occurred to me that the roots of white corruption in 5 Points somehow lay within their association with Negroes.
You are well aware of countless examples in this city of white immorality that exists with absolutely no possible Negro influence. Tammany Hall is a prime example.
At that moment, my soul was blind to such facts. They would not or could not have occurred to me.
Lewis, I could not name another individual with your capacity to so clearly assess their own frailty.
I suppose that the next question would be, have you been able to conquer this revelation enough to continue to participate in our mission?
Oh, yes. These last 4 days have served as a trial of fire for my soul and heart. My conviction to our endeavor could not be stronger.
Then we are back on track, with no postponement needed.
The toll this ordeal has taken has made it impossible to make the necessary arrangements to ignite the fuse leading to the detonation of our plan. Give me tomorrow to pull my contribution together.
Of course. One more day, Harold. Any change of heart?
No, sir. I spec I got a even more powerful fire in my belly than before.
I share your feelings.
On that, I will take my leave of you, gentlemen. Thank you, all 3 of you, for your understanding and your continued trust and loyalty.
It is only what you have earned through countless examples of your unselfish support, my dear friend.
Good night.
Sleep well, Louis.
I have no doubt that I will.
Night to you, Mr. Tappan.
Act 3, Scene 2. Sadie is reading from the Level 1 McGuffey Reader.
Here is John. There
Or.
are. There are Anne and Jane. Anne has a new book. It is the first book. Anne must keep it nice and clean.
Very good, Sadie. Keep going.
John must not tear the book.
Excellent, Sadie. That was almost perfect. You're making quick progress.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Let's stop for today. Hopefully tomorrow Harold will be able to join us.
I sure hope so. I'd hate it if Harold got behind on his lessons. He say he had to help Dr. Smith on some important business. You know what kind of business?
Work that we anticipate will help to get Mr. Lincoln elected and bring us victory in the war that is sure to follow.
How my cousin helping with that?
He is a perfect example of the multitudes of white slaves in the South that will hopefully inspire the white fighting men of the North to take up arms to end slavery, if for nothing else, to guarantee that their own families will never be forced into bondage.
But Harold ain't white.
To Northern whites he will appear to be.
I suppose you'd be right.
Sadie, may I ask you how you burned your hand?
Master's wife had poked the houseman hold me still while she poured hot oil on it.
Why?
She said it was 'cause I dropped a plate and it broke. She say she did it to mind me to watch what my hands is doing. But that ain't the truthful reason why she done that to me.
What is the truth?
She jealous that Master takes such a strong liking to me, but there was nothing she could do about it, except take it out on me. I ain't asked for Master to come to my cabin. Every time he come and do his business, I had to fight to keep from losing my supper.
Is that why you decided to run away?
It'd be Harold that made up his mind that we was gonna run. He say that if he didn't get me away from Mistress, she was gonna hurt me someplace that'd make me lame, or maybe find some way to kill me and the baby.
You had the strength of character to do what needed to be done, Sadie. You must be proud of yourself. I'm certainly proud of you.
There is a loud pounding on the front door.
Hello, anybody? Catherine, JW, someone please let us in. Can anyone hear me? Please open the door.
JW opens the door, and Malvina, supporting Lavinia, enter. Both have had their clothing severely torn, enough to reveal their bare skin. They are bruised and bloody from injuries to their face, neck, and arms.
What happened?
JW assists to get Lavinia seated, then helps his mother to a seat. Catherine enters from the kitchen.
My God, what happened?
I don't know.
We were attacked by a mob.
Dear Lord, I'll get water and towels.
Catherine exits.
Where? Why?
At the corner of Pearl and Chatham Streets.
For no reason. They don't need no reason.
As Malvina begins to speak, Sadie moves to the buffet to pour 2 glasses of water. She gives one to Lavinia.
We were on our way to St. Philip's. I hailed a streetcar, not noticing that it wasn't marked colored people allowed in this car. But despite this, the driver pulled over to let us on. Once on the platform, your grandmother and I were confronted by the conductor, who refused to take our fare and began to forcibly push the both of us back towards the steps to the street. I yelled at him that not only did he have no legal right to place his hands on us, but he was breaking the laws of common decency by assaulting respectable women in this manner.
Catherine enters with a basin of water and towels.
Sadie, would you help me? I'll tend to the missus if you'll see to Lavinia.
Yes, sir.
Sadie hands Malvina the other glass of water.
Thank you.
Go on, Mother.
That conductor increased the violence of his assault. He hit me with his fist as if punching a man, and referred to the both of us as trouble-causing niggers who don't know their place. Lavinia defended me with all the strength you could muster, striking him just hard enough to knock his hat to the floor of the car. Well, just when I thought the situation could get no worse, it did. The man transformed from a beast into a devil, swinging his arms and landing hit after hit. He knocked us both to the floor as if he were Mr. Heenan himself, all the time yelling to passers-by who would listen that these niggers had assaulted him and needed to be taught a lesson. I managed to pull myself up, grabbed hold of Lavinia, and got the both of us off the car in an attempt to find refuge in the nearest shop. But our way was blocked by a mob who had answered the cries of the conductor, and that mob, despite sympathetic shouts from many aboard the streetcar to leave us alone, began to tear our clothing, while slapping and scratching our faces and bodies. All this amidst deafening screams of dirty niggers, teach them a lesson, and declarations insisting that their sons were not going to fight in any war to set our slave cousins free.
The look on those faces, so full of hate, like looking into the face of Satan himself.
I thought that Lavinia and I would shortly be in the presence of our Lord. But thanks to the Almighty, the police arrived and pulled us away from death's grip. They physically carried us for blocks until the roar of the mob was left far behind. We then limped the rest of the way to the station house, where we recounted all that had happened to a Captain John Cameron, who seemed sympathetic. However, after taking down the report, he assured us that he would speak to the conductor, and then had Lavinia and I escorted on foot home through the streets in our present condition to be ogled and giggled at by anyone we happened to pass. It wasn't until we arrived that we realized the loss of our purses in the chaos meant that neither of us had our house key.
Something has got to be done about this.
Nothing can be done, James.
My grandmother and my pregnant mother assaulted by some animal in public, and all the police say is that they will speak to him?
That's the way it is. The police will only do so much. At least they saved us from that mob. There are plenty of places in this country where the so-called police would have stood by and let those savages kill us, mutilate our bodies, and set our remains on fire.
I can't just do nothing.
You have to, at least for now.
J.W. goes to one of the window-side bookcases and opens a drawer to retrieve a pistol. Malvina stands.
James!
Mother, please, sit down.
No, you have got to get a hold of yourself. If you do anything violent, you could end up dead.
I'm willing to take that chance.
Of sacrificing the effect you would have on the future of hundreds, maybe thousands of Negro children? Their education has been placed in your hands. You have been given the privileged responsibility of seeing not only to their academic enlightenment, but to prepare them with the knowledge that will make it possible to survive in this hostile world. Alive, you are an invaluable asset to the fight for advancement. If you go out seeking violent revenge and are killed, all that potential will be lost. What happened to me today left me beaten and humiliated, but still alive. I've already lost 2 of my children. If you lose your life because of this, that would kill me.
All right, Mother.
Please put that weapon away.
J.W. returns the pistol.
Sadie, let's get the both of them upstairs and into bed.
Lavinia rises with Sadie's help. They both head toward the stairs. Malvina doesn't move, eyes on her son.
Come along, missus.
Malvina releases her focus on J.W. and moves to the stairs with Catherine's assistance.
Nana, what is that on your back? They did that to you?
No, darling, those are old scars. The wounds from another life. We all have them. Am I right, Sadie?
Sadie nods. All 4 women continue up the stairs, leaving J.W. standing silently. Act 3, Scene 3. It is the next evening after dinner. On the buffet is a tray with a pitcher of water and another with a bottle of whiskey, a bottle of scotch, and glasses. James enters from the office carrying 3 thick packages wrapped in brown paper and tied with string. He places the parcels on the dining table and, remembering where they are, moves to a bookcase where he retrieves scissors from one of its drawers. He cuts the string of one of the packages to reveal a large stack of broadsides. Harold enters from the basement.
Harold, you're the first one. Is Sadie feeling up to attending?
Yes, sir. She be up for the meeting.
This incident with my wife and mother has been more than distressing, but I'm determined to return to our cause in full force tomorrow.
As Papa saw about what happened.
Thank you, Harold. We'll see if we can do anything about it. I met with Mr. Tappan this morning, and he is consulting with a lawyer on our behalf.
Harold is surprised by the possibility of justice. Sadie enters from the basement.
Dr. Sliff say there might be something that the law gonna do about what happened to the missus and their mammy.
Every day I see more and more how different things be up north.
Well, it's far from a sure thing, but there is a chance for at least a semblance of justice.
Semblance?
Something close to justice. These broadsides, warning of the South's plan to enslave laboring-class whites, were delivered today, 1,500 in total. Mr. Tappan will see that they are posted and distributed throughout this city, and just as many will be circulated throughout every other major city in the North. You did an excellent job yesterday, Harold. You are quite compelling in your description of your life from the plantation. Tomorrow will be the test of our plan. No more practice. You will be presented in public as a former slave, an example of uncountable others like yourself who continue to suffer the degradation of Southern bondage.
I's be ready and willing, Dr. Smith.
How's that gonna help?
To preserve your safety, especially in your condition, you would be best utilized in assisting my wife, mother, and Catherine in delivering articles illustrating this threat of white slavery to every abolitionist newspaper in the city.
All right.
Another issue I want to address, of which you are already somewhat aware, is the very real danger to both of you of being discovered by a slave catcher. Vigilance is always necessary, but even more so for you, Harold. Now that you will be publicly drawing attention to yourself, the chance of some bounty hungry hunter for runaways matching you to your former master's advertised description is of serious concern. You won't be introduced by your real name, and we will never let you out of our sight. But these catchers can be deviously brilliant in their methods, and will easily resort to violence to capture their prey. Once in our hands, it would be almost impossible to legally prevent you from being returned to bondage. If you decide that the chance of losing your freedom is too large a risk, we will all understand.
Dr. Smith, you give me your word that if something do happen, Sadie and the baby be cared for, never left to tend for themselves. Then I give you my word to see this through to the end.
You have my word, Harold.
Then I'll be with you.
Thank you.
There is a knock on the front door. It is Philip and Tappan.
James, how are Malvina and Lavinia?
Recovering. We give thanks to God that the baby is unharmed. Lewis, what transpired in your consultation?
I met with a Mr. Chester Arthur, the junior partner at Culver, Parker and Arthur. He believes you have a case that could result in victory.
That is blessed news. J.W., Mr. Tappan has arrived with news that you should hear. Would you please join us?
I'll be right down.
In the meantime, here are the broadsides. They arrived today from Mr. Douglas's printing office.
James gives one to everyone in the room.
It looks perfect.
Let's hear how it reads, Lewis, if you wouldn't mind.
J.W. appears at the top of the stairs. James signals him to stand where he is.
Beware, you hard-working laborers of the North. The Southern states have for some time subscribed to the proposition that slavery should not only be extended to the North and the territories, but that this brutal institution should be devoid of any respect as to the race of its potential property. The only remaining consideration barring a white person from joining those multitudes in bondage would be class. What this means, fellow citizens, is that you and your families are in danger. vulnerable to the whims of the profit and power-seeking Southern gentry that would force you to endure the shackles of slavery, thrown into the same depths of physical, emotional, and sexual degradation occupied by the Negro. This abomination of the South has always included chattel indiscernible in color and features from their masters. The author, William J., proclaims that people of the North are apt to be disbelieving when they hear of white slaves in the South, and yet a little reflection would convince them that in the process of time, a large proportion of the slaves must be white. One can find uncountable advertisements for runaways described as white boy, quite white, and clear white. Apart from this are the even more difficult-to-believe stories of pure Anglo-Saxon unfortunates who have found themselves subjected to the harsh conditions of slavery, despite having no blood connection to any descendant of Africa, like poor Violet Ludlow, a white woman who was sold several times despite her legitimate claim that she was white. Or a young white boy kidnapped and about to be auctioned off when his father appeared on the scene, grabbing him and exclaimed, "Have you dared to seize and sell a white child?" In Georgia, a teenaged girl with white parents was sold as a Negro slave by her own father, but was blessedly rescued by her mother. You are urged to use your votes, and if necessary your very lives, to stop this growing tide of dehumanizing bondage that is set to engulf Northern white men and all whom they love. Well, it's certainly effective.
Effective enough to convince Northern white men that a civil war to end slavery would be a worthwhile endeavor?
I don't know. It will without a doubt convince some. Whether it will be enough, only time will tell.
Don't forget that once war is declared, there will be many who will join the fight simply out of duty, because their government has called upon them.
If there aren't enough white soldiers to do battle against the Southerners, the North will be forced to allow Negroes to enlist.
Perhaps, but the South has access to Negroes as well, bred to do as they are told, and their numbers amount to an ocean in comparison to our pond.
Gentlemen, all of these points are valid, but at this moment we must focus all of our energy on convincing as many Northern white men as we can that it is in their best interest to 1. Elect Lincoln, and 2. Participate in a civil war to destroy slavery. This,
Philip holds up the broadside,
is our strongest weapon. It won't accomplish all on its own. The rest we must leave in God's hands.
So much of our success depends on you, Lewis, and your loyal army of white citizens sympathetic to our cause. The participation of Negroes in this endeavor must seem to the public to be minor at best. Otherwise, we run the very real risk of inciting rumors of a Negro plot built on lies. I've spoken to Harold, and he assures me that he is ready and willing to do whatever is necessary, regardless of the danger.
Harold, I'm scared for you. Maybe you shouldn't do this.
Now, you know I promised Dr. Smith that I'd be sticking by him and all the rest of these here men as long as they needs me. You don't need to be scared. Nothing gonna happen to me.
I couldn't stand the thought of you suffering back on that plantation. I'd just die if that happened to you.
That ain't gonna happen. And even if it do, you hear Dr. Smith giving his oath that you and the baby be cared for, that you will never be left alone to tend for yourself.
JW say all the white folks listening to you gonna think that you be white too. How come you okay with that now?
I suppose it got something to do with why baby thinking that's why. Them folks seeing me as a white man helped bring freedom to all our kin back in Georgia. Yo mama, my mama, everybody. Me being a part of that ain't got nothing to do with turning my back on who I is. Having our kinfolk free and living close again, that'd be the biggest miracle God could ever do. Seedy, I gotta do my part to bring this freedom to our people, else I might as well go on back to that plantation on my own. We both gotta do our part.
I sure not to apologize to y'all.
Sadie, you don't have to apologize for not wanting to lose Harold.
That's right, and I join with my father in assuring you and Harold that the baby and yourself will be cared for, no matter what happens.
As do I.
As do all of us.
Thank you. Thank you. All of y'all.
Now, James, do you want to hear about my meeting with the lawyer?
Yes, Lewis. What was the outcome?
As I said, he believes strongly that there is a case here that can result in victory. He pointed out to me that there is no legislative support for any privately owned streetcar company hired by the city to deny access to any sober person who is well behaved and free from disease, regardless of race. The segregation now in place among the 4 streetcar companies is founded only upon the whims of the company owners.
Very encouraging. What does he believe will be the defense of the Third Avenue Railroad?
Their only defense would be a business owner's right to operate said company as they see fit.
Of course. All 3 of us, you, Philip, and myself, are business owners, operating according to our own individual conscience.
What Mr. Arthur stressed to me is that these companies, although privately owned, are operating under city government contracts to provide service to its citizens, acting as agents of the city, and as such they are obliged to uphold the standards of the city, which do not include the segregation of the races on public transportation.
I see. What do you think, son?
I think that any case brought against the policies of a business in this city will be in for quite a fight, and the fact that the Plinkards are Negroes will double the chance of losing.
So your opinion is that we should let it go?
No. The bruised and bloodied condition of our mothers after that brutal attack must be met with action.
May I speak, James?
Of course.
I hope you would never entertain any doubts of how sickened I am by what happened to Lavinia and Malvina, or how much I share your desire to see justice. But in my opinion, taking on this battle would consume not only financial resources, but also the resource of time, both of which I think must be afforded to the larger causes at hand.
You're saying we should wait?
Yes. But the longer you wait, the more difficult the battle. And I'm sure that both of you can see that there will be a point in time beyond which the fight would be futile.
Is he right, son? My heart argues for justice now, but my mind tells me that Philip is right.
You didn't see them when they arrived home, traumatized by that vicious attack, clothing torn, bloody injuries to every part of their bodies?
No, I wasn't here. But I'm still asking you, is Philip right?
Yes.
There is a startling sound of glass shattering as a large stone comes hurtling through the narrow window next to the front door. Sadie screams.
My God!
Shh! Everyone remain silent. Don't move.
All obey. James cautiously approaches the front door. He listens for any sign of human presence. Catherine enters from the kitchen.
What in God's name?
Tappan raises his hand to silence her. James looks through the broken window to the outside, satisfied that no one is present. He opens the door, revealing that the words "dirty niggers" had been painted on it. Malvina appears at the upstairs landing.
What was that?
It's all right, my darling. Seems we were paid a visit by individuals who thought we needed to be reminded about descending from Africa.
Lavinia enters next to Malvina.
Has something happened?
Just some vandals, Mother. Everything is under control. Both of you please return to your beds.
They must have found us through the purses we lost yesterday. Come on, Malvina. In these cases, it's rarely more than one attack within the same night.
She and Malvina exit.
I'll clean this mess up and get some whitewash to cover that up.
James closes and bolts the door.
Thank you, Catherine.
Catherine exits into the kitchen.
You have to report this to the police.
You think it will do any good?
Well,
unfortunately, the police will provide only nominal protection at best against this kind of thing, especially where citizens of our hue are concerned.
I suppose once again there's nothing we can do.
I didn't say that, son. For the time being at least, all in this household must be extra vigilant. We've already had all the locks to the outside changed. Never open any door without being sure to first check that either there is no one on the other side or any individuals present are known to us. Harold, I want you and Sadie to know that we keep a weapon here in this drawer.
James retrieves the gun.
Are you familiar with its operation?
Yes, sir. And I'll make sure that Sadie be knowing how to use it too.
That's fine. We may not be in a position to expect protection from the police, but we'll do our best to protect ourselves in our own home.
Philip moves to lift the stone.
I pray that this incident tonight will be the last.
As I'm sure we all do.
Sadie, what's wrong?
I don't know. I think that the baby be coming.
James places his hand on her stomach.
You are in labor. Harold, let's get her downstairs. J.W., get Catherine. Tell her that I will need 3 basins of water, 1 hot and 2 warm, plus clean towels and 3 clean sheets.
J.W. exits to the kitchen.
Philip, will you get my medical bag from the closet in the upstairs hallway?
I'm on my way.
Louis, I can use your help downstairs.
All right, but I don't know anything about the birthing of the baby.
Act 4, Scene 1. It is evening. The noise of celebration is in the streets. Shouts of Lincoln wins, bands playing, and the sound of fireworks. Sadie is sitting in the living room, holding her 2-month-old son, Harold William Smith, called H.W. The child has been frightened by the noise and is crying.
Shh. It's all right, H.W. Everything be okay. They celebrating 'cause they done elected a man that's gonna bring freedom to our people. Ain't that wonderful? It sure is.
There is a faint knocking. She carries H.W. to the front door.
Who there?
There was a sound like pebbles hitting the door.
Hello? Somebody there?
Sadie retrieves the pistol from the bookcase drawer.
Y'all go on away from here now. I ain't playing with you.
There is a sound of people outside the front door. The door opens, and in walks James, Malvina, the Vignier, J.W., Harold, and Catherine, all in a celebratory state. Each wears a hat and a coat pinned with Lincoln election medals. Harold, Malvina, and J.W. wear an election ribbon bearing the president's image and the words, People's Badge, Honest Old Abe, the People's Choice. James carries a banner with a larger-than-life picture of Lincoln's head that reads, Honest Gabe Lincoln, the hope of our country. All freeze when they see Sadie. Relieved to see them, she has lowered the gun.
It's all right, Sadie. It's just us.
It's all right,
Hello,
Sadie.
Sadie.
Hello, Sadie.
Hi, y'all. Welcome back. I thought somebody was trying to get in.
Sadie puts the gun away.
Must have been the wind. It be blowing pretty good out there. How little Harold William Snit be?
Harold moves to her, takes a peek at the baby.
Me and H.W. could hear all the screaming and yelling and see the lights flashing. Show sounds exciting.
It is exciting. I've never seen a city so alive.
Shouting full-souled and full-voiced for joy. We can thank this man and the intelligent citizens of the North that voted for him.
Why don't you hang your banner over the window, James?
Excellent idea. Catherine, I think a toast is called for. That last bottle of Madeira is the perfect choice.
Right away.
James pulls a dining chair to the window and stands on it to place the banner.
There.
Look at that. I certainly had my doubts. Thought it was impossible.
Proof that the impossible can become possible.
Do you know the first time I realized that Mr. Lincoln was truly a man that could spark the flames of freedom in this country?
No.
When Mr. Frederick Douglass told me that Mr. Lincoln was the first United States politician whom he had spoken to freely, who in no single instance reminded him of the color difference between them.
Madeira.
Thank you, Catherine.
It's too bad that Dr. Wife and Mr. Tappan aren't here. This celebration owes so much to their efforts.
But despite their absence, we can still include them in our toasts of appreciation. Here is to our newly elected president. May he maintain his strength of mind and body on the long and difficult path that lay ahead. To Mr. Lincoln.
To
Mr. Lincoln.
Here is to our dear absent friends, Dr. Philip White, for recognizing our most effective opportunity to assist in bringing about Lincoln's glorious victory, and Mr. Louis Tappan, for supplying the necessary contingent of supporters who worked tirelessly to make the pursuit of that opportunity a success. to Philip White and Lewis Tappan,
To Philip White and Lewis Tappan.
and to each of you, my wife and my mother, who sacrificed the personal pursuit of justice in the hopes that we may see justice for millions. To my son, who worked often without sleep to support any and every aspect of our endeavor. To Catherine and Sadie, who prepared and saw to the publishing of a multitude of articles proclaiming the heinous threat of Southern slavery to the Northern laborer. And finally, to Harold, who bravely and without hesitation exposed himself to the dangers of being returned to bondage so that he might be an example to the masses of not only the existence of Southern white slavery, but also a testament to the inhuman brutality that is subjected to human property without regards to color. To all of you,
Don't forget yourself, James. Your organizational abilities was the glue that held it all together.
all right. Thank you, my darling. To all of us.
To all of us.
There is a knock at the front door.
Who is it?
It's Philip.
Dr. White, come in.
Philip, we were just toasting you. Have a glass of Madeira. Join the celebration.
Thank you, I will. Hello, everyone. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Since you are toasting me, allow me to do the same to all of you, and say that I am extremely proud to have played a part amongst a multitude of players who were dedicated to doing whatever was necessary to have a measurable effect on the outcome of this election. To all of you. And to Mr. Lincoln.
To Mr. Lincoln.
Now, I have news that I'm sure you haven't heard.
What is it?
I've been informed that less than an hour ago, 7 Southern states began proceedings to secede from the Union.
It has begun.
We always knew war was inevitable.
Yes, we did. But it's upon us.
It takes your breath away.
It will take several months for both the North and South to mobilize, but there is no turning back.
Ain't this what we's always wanted to happen? A fight to win our freedom?
Yes, there were 2 goals behind our mission. One we have accomplished. The other we cannot be sure of until the call goes out for men of fighting age to step forward.
And if there are too small in number, will our president allow Negroes to join the fight for their own freedom?
It's difficult to say, J. Gavir. A president is often forced to compromise his personal inclinations. There is a powerful fear amongst a substantial number of white citizens that arming Negroes will lead to the massacre of whites in the street.
I ain't got no call to be shooting white folks that never done me no harm. If we just gets a chance, we prove to all of them that we don't got no mind to kill nobody except those that want to deny us our freedom.
I can't argue with you, Harold. I can only say that we'd have to be patient. If we are not called upon to take up arms, we must focus on helping the fight by any means available to us.
Harold, it would be so easy for you to volunteer when the call goes out. They'd never know the difference.
Oh, yeah, they would. They'd know right quick.
How? Lots of poor white Georgia farm boys speak much the same as you, and I'm sure you wouldn't be the only Southerner whose moral conscience led them to fight for the North.
It ain't the way I talk they're gonna mark me a Negro. I may not live like a Negro to most, but I am one on the inside, and I carry the scars of being a nigger, a slave on the outside.
Harold takes off his shirt to reveal that his back is completely covered in horrible bullwhip scars from several vicious beatings. The ladies, except for Sadie, gasp loudly.
I be always a rebellious slave, and Master be set in his mind acurely of that.
Catherine is overcome with sadness.
Good Lord, Harold.
Harold puts his shirt back on.
You be all right, Catherine? I didn't mean to upset you.
I'm all right. It's just the shock. Excuse me.
Act 4, Scene 2. It is early morning. Catherine enters from the kitchen carrying a tray of freshly washed silver tableware. Harold enters from the basement carrying 2 valises, his coat and hat. Catherine stops short at the sight of Harold.
Morning, Catherine.
Catherine places the tray on the buffet.
So the day has arrived.
Yes, Sadie and me finally been moving on. Thanks to Mr. Tappan and his brother.
Harold sets all he carries next to the front door.
I wish you both nothing but happiness.
Sadie will be giving you her own thank yous, but I wanted to tell you for myself how much I shall enough appreciate everything you done for us.
I was more than happy to do it, Harold.
You and everybody in this house showed us more kin and kindness than we had known in our whole lives before this.
Harold, I want to tell you something.
All right.
You are one of the most loyal, kind, and bravest men I've ever known.
You don't have to say that, Catherine.
Yes, I do. Before you leave here for good, I have to say, I love you, Harold. I love you. And I'd marry you in a second, without any fear and never a moment of regret.
Catherine. I can't find the words that would tell you how much what you say mean to me. I can tell you for sure that I will never forget what you say, and I will never forget you. I hopes you can understand that I's sworn of my own choosing to stick with my cousin, to make sure that she and the child are always taken care of. That be what matter most to me.
I understand, Harold. I suppose that's got a lot to do with why I feel about you the way I do.
Sadie enters from the basement, wearing a shawl, a hat hanging from her neck, and carrying H.W. She senses the intimacy between Harold and Catherine.
So you'd be working as a coachman for Mr. Tappan's brother. Sounds kinda exciting if you ask me, driving around all those well-to-dos.
It's sure is a blessing. A place for Sadie and me and H.W. to live. Enough money to keep food in our beds and clothes on our backs. First steps out of the safe theater's house and into freedom on our own is looking even better than we hoped. Sadie, you got everything?
Yeah, checked and checked again.
I was just telling Catherine how blessed we feel about our place with Mr. Arthur Tappan.
That's right. Truly blessed. Catherine, I wants to thank you for the kindness you showed us.
Like I told Harold, it was my pleasure, Sadie. I wish both of you all the luck in the world.
Jacob comes hurrying down the stairs.
You are still here. I was afraid that I had missed your send-off.
We still here? Mrs. Tappan ain't due for a bit.
That's a relief. Do you mind if I say goodbye to Harold William?
No, course not.
Goodbye, handsome boy. Do you mind your mother now, okay? We're all going to miss the three of you.
Lavinia appeared at the top of the stairs.
You've become friendly. Please don't forget that.
That's right. Please don't forget that. You have people that love and care for you and will be here for you.
Thank you, Lavinia. Y'all done nothing from the time we showed up but welcome us like kinfolk.
Darlings, you are kinfolk. We are bound to each other.
James and Malvina appeared at the top of the stairs.
Looks like we're the last ones down. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Malvina was just saying what a perfect combination of happiness and sorrow she is feeling, and I agree. We are both filled with happiness for you three.
But the thought of you not being here. Oh, I promised myself I would not cry.
Well, I might. We both want you to know that you have enriched our lives more than we are probably aware. Your examples of strength, determination, loyalty, and love will live in our hearts and never be forgotten.
There is a knock at the door. Catherine moves to answer.
Lewis has arrived.
Good morning, Catherine.
Morning to you, Mr. Tappan. We're all assembled. Please come in.
Lewis, you have impeccable timing. We were just this second finishing our goodbyes.
Good morning, everyone. Sad morning.
It's the perfect combination of joy and sadness.
Yes, Malvina, that is the apt description. Harold, Sadie, are you ready?
Yes, sir. We be ready.
Harold puts on his coat and hat.
Sadie, once you and Harold get settled, it would be my pleasure to continue your lessons. You can send word via Mr. Tappan.
All right, I'll do that. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Sadie moves towards the door. She stops halfway.
You okay?
I never even gave it no thought that I ever in my life be anywhere that folks treat me with such kindness that y'all has shown me in this house. Before I come here, I can't remember the last time I lay down to sleep without being scared. I suppose I been mostly scared all the time. I want to thank y'all, and I want to thank God that we's able to live out of bondage, and that my son ain't never gonna know the life of being a slave. I'll be ready now.
All say their goodbyes. Harold and Sadie leave with Tappan.
James, I need your arms around me.
Come here, I've got you.
I said I wouldn't cry.
Who cares? You go on and cry.
Catherine is crying.
Catherine, are you going to be all right?
I'll be fine.
Are you sure?
Yes, thank you, J.W.
There was a knock at the front door. Catherine answered.
Dr. White, come in.
From the looks of all of you, my only guess is that I missed the departure.
They just left.
Well, the nice thing is that they are still in the city. We will see them periodically.
That's true. But the fact that they won't be living here has taken an especially heavy toll on all of us.
Of course it has. Well, maybe the news I brought will brighten things a little.
What news? What happened?
From the Russian Empire, a document has been signed by Emperor Alexander, the Emancipation Manifesto, freeing close to 20 million serfs from bondage.
What does that mean to us?
Another precedent, Jacobu. It might have a very powerful influence on the speed at which freedom will come to this country.
You're saying that Lincoln will follow suit and write his own Emancipation Manifesto?
From what we know of the character of our president, I would say that the chances are very much in our favor. The eyes of the world are on the United States and Mr. Lincoln. They watch, eager to see how this democracy, this affront to monarchy, will rectify what is a blatant contradiction to what our founding fathers declared self-evident.
But I don't see how drafting and signing such a document will make it enforceable.
I'd agree with J.W. I don't see how it will make a difference if the South secedes.
A document of emancipation created by Lincoln can become Northern policy, and as, God willing, our forces capture Southern territory, the slave inhabitants will automatically come under the dictates of the North, and be forever free.
Forever, if the North wins. I'm hungry. Come on, Catherine, I'll help you get breakfast prepared.
Oh, all right. I know there's no use in trying to talk you out of it.
I know you're perfectly capable, Garland. I just like working in the kitchen sometimes, especially since I'm not being forced to.
Lavinia and Catherine exit to the kitchen.
Your mother is right, James. Have you given any consideration to what you and your family would do if the slave state won the war?
I haven't thought about it seriously. We would obviously have to abandon this country. My hope would be that the ideas of liberty in America would not disappear completely, but once every state and territory became dependent on slavery, with every race being vulnerable to a lifetime of bondage, I can only see that all would be lost. However, with so much of the world having already abolished slavery or making significant strides toward that end, perhaps a threat of force against the all-consuming evil here will be the result. What are your thoughts?
Well, having no family of my own, my utmost concern would center on ensuring the safety of my two sisters. A widow with a young daughter and a spinster would be amongst the most vulnerable in the chaos that would ensue.
The North has to win, the Lord willing.
The other outcome is just too horrible.
You know, Even if the North does win and slavery is abolished, the changing of the law will not necessarily change the minds of most whites. Also, physical freedom for the slaves will not necessarily need freedom of their minds from bondage. That will take who knows how long, especially in the face of powerful forces doing all they can to combat it. And without the existence of Porter's law, the vast majority of white Southern slaves will no longer be legally Negro. They will disappear into the white population, their time in bondage forgotten in 1 or 2 generations. Those of us who have any visible stamp of Africa will still be subjected to the hatred, scorn, and vicious suppression from those who continue to see the Negro as a threat. A free Negro even more so. The ending of slavery will just be another step.
A step forward, no matter how small, still brings us closer to our goal. 2 steps back, followed by 3 steps forward. It's still 1 step forward.
I am ashamed.
My friend, we all have to be reminded and often remind ourselves of that.
James, I think our child is coming.
James places his hand on her stomach.
I'm sure you're right. Let's get you upstairs. Jacob, you give me a hand. Catherine! Philip, would you inform Catherine and my mother that we will need 3 basins of water, 2 warm and 1 hot, clean towels, and 3 clean sheets.
Absolutely. Lavinia, Catherine.
Philip exits into the kitchen. Lights fade as James, Malvina, and J.W. climb the stairs.